really glad to and proud as this person from my own country to introduce our last keynoter, which is the architect Mario Cucinella. Mario Cucinella is the founder of MCA Studio, an architectural firm based in Bologna. He has been graduated in Genoa in 1987, where he has been mentored by famous architects Giancarlo De Carlo. And from 1987 to 1992, he worked as a project manager for Renzo Piano's studio in Genoa and in Paris. Now is guiding a group of architecture and engineering which are developing an extensive experience in architectural design and urban planning, with particular focus on climate-responsive solution and rational use of resources. As last things I want to mention is that Mario is also the founder of the Building Green Futures, which is a non-profit organization that promotes sustainable development through green architecture and urban regeneration. So their goal is to create and to build environments that incorporate clean technologies and local knowledge for better living condition and sustainable access to natural resources in developing and less developing countries. And one of the most important projects that this institution realized is a green school for Gaza and Palestine. Okay. So please.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and I'm very pleased to be here in Istanbul and get the opportunity to talk about my work. Well, I think there was some question on before about the green buildings, and I think it's very important that we start to talk about what innovation is mean in terms of creating better building for the future. And I was very curious because, I'm an architect and I do buildings, but how many building was done? How many square meters are built? And I found this as 145 billion square meters of building on the planet, which is mean why we have so great problems in terms of energy consumption. But the most important thing is not what we are built, but what we're going to build in the next 20 years. So that numbers is very scary in terms of square meter build and in terms of impact, in environmental impact. But when I look at these numbers, I say, well, there will be no worry for works in the next 20 years because there will be so much thing to do and to build. The point is how we're going to build this building in the future if already today we're facing a serious problem of energy consumption and CO2 emission. So for me, when we're talking about the innovation, my view in innovation is how we can drive designers, suppliers, manufacturers, contractors in this direction. That needs a lot of time, and then it's very important to start very, very quickly. Then everybody know what is the major problem. So scientific community tell us today that we reach very close point of no return in terms of CO2 emission. That maybe seems something very far away for us. Say who produces CO2 emission? It's not regarding me, it's not regarding my design, it's not regarding my contractors. But what happens if we continue to do things as today, we reach a point that we are not able to sustain what we do. So it's a sort of a paradox. So what we need to do is an option. There are an option. Then we start to design and build in different way. I think here I know very well Weber and Saint-Gobain because I work with them. I know the effort of many companies to change a product to increase the quality of insulations, details, performance of glass, performance of other materials, but I think the ideas is in the future. Suppliers facing a serious problem in the way they produce material, because CO2 emission is not only what a building produces, but the chain of material are produced behind. So company, they be facing a serial problem of innovation of how they can produce steel, plaster, concrete. How this company, they facing this problem in the next years. So for me, it's a very critical moment on this in this time and the next 20 years. And if I look this map, this is a geographical map. If I change the geography of countries in relation of the production of electricity for oil, you can see how the map of the world has changed. And if I look this map, I don't say Europe is a very sustainable country, or Europe is a country who's going in the direction of sustainable development. So this, and you see Italy, how much is fat. No, but in many countries in Europe, you see Turkey is the blue one, but that is also in relation of a number of people consuming. And you can see France. France is a nuclear power country, so, and you see how small it is. Italy depends on oil for electricity production by 85%. You can imagine in the equilibrium of the planet, what does it mean for a country who's depending totally to the oil? That's creating a series of problems in the future when the oil will be a problem to reach. And of course we need to look at priorities. No, this is a map, again, is another map to see about what I'm sure you heard about it, ecological footprint. So how much land we need for our style of life. And if I look at this map, I say maybe the most sustainable country in this moment are Africa, South America, Australia, and some other countries. Not us. The style of life we're running, like I take an example of Italy, but you can see Europe is almost the same size or dimension. Italy today, when we talk about sustainable development, need 9 times more surface of the country to able to run this quality of life in terms of production of energy, material, food, and everything. So we're facing a serious problem, and architects are very involved because the 50% of all the production of energy is consumed by building. So the real actor of the change will be architecture, will be engineering, will be contractors. So then I feel we are not be very aware about this. Education for the future will be fundamental to change this kind of a paradigm. Education, good practice, and regulation. We are very far away from these 2 points. And if I look, what will be very interesting to see in the next future is today the steel and equilibrium, energy and water are very relevant in terms of resource, but wasting biodiversity, transportation, and pollution. But what happened in the next 10 years? This is a projection by engineering. What happened in the next 10 years? Well, we're facing a very relevant problem, biodiversity, climate, energy. And energy and water, there will be 2 main key issues for access to these 2 items. So how we can provide energy for all and how we can provide water for all. And these 2 items are strongly related to buildings. Buildings consuming, as I said before, 50% of all this resource. So, but I back to some of the question, what does it mean make sustainable building? Now, sometimes for me it's something like people thinking, I don't know, putting 2 photovoltaic panels on the roof, do some insulation. It's a little bit more complex than this. And it's a process. I think one of the first speakers, the Indian doctor, was talking about innovation as a process. I think it's a huge work in building process, because if you want to do a sustainable building, you need to follow a circle, which is the first thing is regarding the reducing the demand of energy. But how we can reduce the demand of energy in buildings? Well, is a natural light, shading, thermal mass, natural ventilation, orientation, the mailing item of architecture. The way you design the way this building is started to design is the first fundamental part of the success of this process. And then, of course, if you reduce the demand of energy, you can use efficiency. So using technology, more efficient technology. And when you already did this, you can use renewable energy, because at that point, photovoltaics and other technology, they will be very efficient because you have a very good design on the building. And then alternative. So sometimes I feel, as I listen today, I mean, building sector of make buildings is at first a very serious thing, but it's very difficult because the people involved from industry, regulations, architects, designers, engineers is a very, very large community. I want to show you very quickly this. This is our building designed and built in the last 10 years. You can see the gray color is the performance of the building based on regulation. So what the regulation tells us. And in the gray is the effort done by us, of course with the client, because we get a good client, and also for our attitude to reduce the demand of energy. And some building is less, others are very small. But what is interesting for me is what is the key point to make this reduction? What is numbers? What's happened? So analyzing on the built building, the bills and everything, we see part of this, only 70% is done by technology. I mean, more efficient system, more insulation, more efficient machine. But the most important thing is the design. So when we talk about sustainability, we don't make the mistake then we're thinking somebody else is going to solve the problem and I do whatever I like because somebody is going to put a machine and magically make a sustainable building. This story is over. You remember how building was built in the fantastic period of 1980. Then architects completely forgot the knowledge how to build building in climate relationship, because the dreams of technology was I can put an air conditioning unit and you can have any kind of climate you want inside your building, whether outside is hot or cold. And the architects in that moment, they lose knowledge of 1,000 years of building in relation with climate. Totally lost. And the result was a very, very expensive bill in the last 30 years because buildings are unsustainable. So for me, I try in the work we did in the last years to define a few things. Creative empathy for me was a very important key, because empathy you need to you put yourself in some relation with a place. You empathize because you try to understand where you are, what you're doing. And creativity is a tool. It's very important, But be careful, because creativity can become extravaganza, strange things. And we don't need this. We need a very high quality in creativity, but we need this creativity to be very empathic with the place. So we define three elements: low-tech, high-performance building; bellezza, which is, I'm sure you will know Italians, is beauty; and vernacular innovation. And this is another key point for me. Vernacular innovation is a paradox, because you say vernacular architecture, what they do with innovation. I'm going to show you something very interesting things. And building as a catalyst for social change. So the responsibility of architects in relation of the social change. But in terms of what I call low-tech, high-performance, this is pictures. It shows you exactly what I'm looking for. You can see this is a guy wave us with a camel, but if I change the point of view of this picture, this is not only a guy, this is a doctor with a GPS antenna for satellite connection. This is a PV cells photovoltaics to produce electricity for a battery, and the battery supply energy to a fridge. this is a combination, what I like to think about what will be the future of innovation. We need to find an equilibrium within context, history, and of course, high tech or innovation. And responding to this, I did a video project. This is in Ningbo, which is close to Shanghai, and is a Chinese lantern. It's a small building for PhD doctors for research in sustainable technology, and is done by a Chinese donor who gave this building to his wife as a present. But it was interesting because this building we call that building was a female building because it was a donation to a woman. And the first question of these guys say, well, I want to do a sustainable center for technology. Can you put photovoltaics everywhere to show the technology? I said, no, we are not interested in to put photovoltaics. Because photovoltaics are terrible things. It's not a nice product. There's no poetry. There's nothing there. It's just like a washing machine. And I say, I think that if we want to do a Center for Sustainable Technology, for me, the idea is that we're creating with a sustainable technology a beauty. Now, we need to give the ideas to people that sustainable building, a better building, but a much more nicer. And when I'm saying nice, for me, is because they have some beauty inside. The concept of beauty was changing time always. What is beauty now was not the same 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And for me today, when I define beauty, a building that also have some soul, something express the idea of sustainability. And the building was a dancer, but that's built in a very difficult climate context. We are in a very humid and hot, and very humid and cold. So it's like a double-skin building with a very heavy walls and very well insulated to protect the building from outside. It is not a place when you open the windows, because in the summer there will be 38 degrees and 90% humidity. You don't want that in, but you want to ventilate the buildings. And the strategies of this building was an example to show how sustainable building can be designed in the future. There will be no one technology. There will be no one solution. It's definitely a combination of different techniques. And when I say that is in this case, we're combining different techniques. Like this is geothermal system, and this is ground cooling to ventilate the building. But the shape of the building is made have one very large laboratory on the ground to using the earth temperature, and the floors is because we want creating this stack effect. We want to creating this chimney system. In the summer, we're dehumidificating the air, bring in, and the cool air come in and go inside of the room and out of the windows, and we're using the thermal mass at the building to using low temperature to make the building, safe in terms of you have a temperature around you, and using ventilation. And of course, in the winter time, we want, using always thermal mass in the floor is invisible. Using the system of ventilation, because we're using the hot air on the double skin, cross ventilation, and using this as a chimney, and the same technique on the floor. And this is done in China, in one of the most fast economy in the planet, to show that if you want to do sustainable building, you need to start first thinking about which kind of technique, combining with the climate. And of course, shape of the building is matter quite a lot. And then, a few years before, I did this for the Minister of Environment in Italy and Minister of Science and Technology of China's people, Republic of China. And the building was, I presented this as my building. This is the building, it's leaves looking on south. And the first sketch was done to show that this is a building facing south. We are in Beijing. Beijing is a very, very, very cold and dry weather in the winter, and is very hot and humid in the summer. So in the winter time, we want to keep the building protect from the north. It's the wind coming from the Gobi Desert. So the north face of the building was a wall, you know, like a shoulder, and the south was like steps with gardens to open to the south to get more sun possible in the winter time. And of course, we work and also researching ideas. Now, for me, the landscape and the nature is not exactly what the Indian guys said before. I mean, nature is a good reference, but for me, it is also vernacular architecture and definitely landscape. This is a human landscape. So the building shape is like a C. You can see in these pictures, and the shape of the building is done because a C shape make the facade east and west with light in the morning and light in the afternoon, so we can maximize daylighting, reducing using artificial light. And that's the building just finished. And you can see from this picture, this is the terrace system. There will be gardens. Now you see that before. And the photovoltaics are there, and they was fully integrating on the shape of the building because they producing energy but also shading the building. Oh, you see that in this picture. And that is the north face, very heavy and very well insulated. No? And that is the summer. We are 1st of July, opening day for the building, and the picture is not for the girl, but because you can see the south face of the building was totally shaded. There was no any solar gain from the south. This is a detail, but when you're thinking about your building, you need to think about all these things, because all these elements increase the demand of energy or make your building more and more sustainable. And of course, that's not enough. No, that's not enough, because you cannot make a building a zero energy building. I did, and I showed you that before, but that was another country. But you can do with your design and your knowledge to reduce the 50%, 30%, 80% on building. Then I'm working now in this, we are under construction for a building in Africa. And this will be the first building with energy certification. Green Stars is South African system, and on the West Africa, so in all the area from Nigeria to Senegal. And well, for sketches, I'm still an architect. I like to work on, in a very emotive way. And this is the building, But if you see that, for me, it's a combination of memories. Now, if you look in this, the first thing you can see, there's no facade outside, because the sun during in the tropical area, the sun go very fast up, then remain up all the day, and they go down very quickly. So this means the vertical sun, it's very important. And if I do this, I make this floors, and the facade is back behind 2 or 3 meters, so there's no solar gain on the facade. The building is fully under shade during the day, and fortunately this is the only building I did. There's no thermal bridges, because the temperature inside in the winter time is the 23 degree. We don't have this problem. And then it's a challenger. This building is a challenger, because build that in Ghana is not an easy task. But I think for us as architects, we are also the professionals who drive the innovation. Because if we follow what is normally is do, nothing will be a change. I think the rule of an architect is, of course, do what is possible to do, not the impossible. But inside of the possible is to push also contractors. I mean, contractors, industry, are the more conservative industry in the world. So the paradox of innovation is talking with the industry and construction. People, they don't want to change anything. Never they want to change. I was in Berlin in 2000 for the first conference, a European conference in solar architecture. The Minister of Industry of Germany. Germany is one of the most, technology and innovating countries for buildings also. He was shouting to the contractors on the auditorium, say, "You're not enough innovating. You don't do enough innovation." To the German. I look in my home in Italy. Other countries say, well, there must be a lot of pressure to change something in the industry, in construction industry, to make better buildings. So this is fully in concrete, because that's the only way to work is using concrete. And of course it reminds me something, because I like the idea that this kind of buildings is not I like them. People, when look buildings, they recognize themselves. There's something that I match in my culture, not something then creating distance or indifference. And then, of course, this is in the beginning. Is the mega structure. You see the cantilevers floors. You can also use in this for cleaning. You can walk around. You don't need to do anything. You just go out to the door and you're cleaning all the facade. And also it reminds me the palm tree shape. So in the research we do is try to find matching images and relationship, because people, when they see this building, say, well, this is for us and it's done for our city. And this is the final version. And of course, architects alone, they can do only part of the work. I think it's very important that architecture will need to be very well integrated with engineering. So I never find engineering and architects as a problem. I always find a very high level of complicity, because we need a good engineer and the engineer needs good architects. That's the point. There's two different work, and they are fundamentally the way you work with them. And working with environmental engineers is very important, because they do analyze, they help you to find solutions. And always I'm saying, engineering are very good, but sometimes they don't know they do a very good things, because they talk in maybe technically, and for me it's an inspiration of creativity, because they don't know what they talk about something detailed, but for me it's an inspiration to do something else. And of course, we don't have heating problems. There's no heating system. It's only a cooling, and it's and the cantilever systems reduce for 50% the demand of cooling, because there's no solar gain. There's no heating. There's no sun coming in the building. There's the patio, and of course, it's not enough, but it's still a significant amount of energy reduced, and I reduce the size of my services. Everything is coming scaled down. And I do this in this moment. I'm in the final drawings stage before Christmas. This is a military camp close to the city center of Aosta. We are on the Alps. You see, this is the Aosta. Is a little city. It's a Roman city, and here is a Roman walls with internal gardens, and this is a camp. So we demolished these two buildings and rebuilt to be an academic buildings. This one, they will come out. And instead of that two heavy military building, we're going to build this very soft, like a piece of ice, a melting ice. And that's the square. And then, of course, this is done by follow of regulations. There are two elements for the change. One is the market, another one is the regulation. Depending who is most strong in this moment on the market. I feel in this moment the market, the demand of developer is much more stronger than the regulation. I'm working with different developer now asking me to make a very, very sustainable building, LEED certification, energy certification. They don't care about what the regulations say, but they want this product because they cannot sell this product in the market. There's no way. So, and this is the case because the local government decide, and this must be a very top buildings in terms of CO2 emission, follow the European regulation 2016 for residential building, zero emission, 2030, building zero carbon. So this is the line, it's clear, and there's a lot of work need to be done, and we need to, as I said before, we need to drive professionals, contractors, everybody to this direction. But there's no choice. I always very surprised when people thinking, I'm going to make building as before. There's no choice. The market will be severe, and regulation will be more and more difficult. So it's better start to thinking to change. And this is a reality. I'm not talking about something going to happen in 30 years. That's going to happen now. And well, this is study models, and that's what the ideas of inside of this space is like to be inside two pieces of glass. No? And this is an example. This is done is a building for the BNP, for the Banque Nationale de Paris. And the first thing they asked me, say, well, this building needs to follow all the national and local regulation, but this needs to be certified for the French standard because they're French. And unfortunately, I was living in France for 10 years, so I know what this means. But that asks you to a professional, to another level of competence. You need to, because somebody comes to, I want this building with this kind of certification, and that is not. It's not part of the rules, the local rules, but you need to be able to answer to the question. And you can see this is the facade in the southwest, and it's all in glass, and it's a detail you can see here, but it is a double glazing with a little system of protection, solar protection inside, which is moved in relation of the sun. And the other facade is more than 50% opaque because we're facing the problems of high insulation inside the building. Buildings, to be at least a good standard in terms of energy performance, at least is a 50% opaque. You cannot make in all glass building. It's impossible to get a good standard in terms of energy performance. And that's, of course, open a new debate about these glassy skyscrapers. How are you going to do it? How are you going to do a skyscraper fully in glass, especially on the Middle East area? There's no way. So, and the building is up. This is 13 meters high, and is a piazza, is an open square. Then people pass through and go to the park. And this building is interesting because the client, okay, we full the requirement, but then they put on the top floor, the roof is all in photovoltaics, and that's to reduce 100% emission of the building. And of course, this is a choice. It's a choice of shape, because if we decide to make a tower, that was impossible to make enough photovoltaics, then we decide to working on the horizontal way. And I want to tell you a little story. I have another 5 minutes. I want to tell you a story about what I call vernacular innovation. I say behind my work and your work, behind us, there's a 2,000 history of architecture. Don't forget that. And 2,000 years with no electricity. Because electricity, heating, cooling, maybe 100 years, 150 years. The other 2,000 years was nothing there. And architects was... The knowledge of an architect was very important because it was the guy who was able to dealing with climate and find the good solution through innovation. That's why it's important, vernacular architecture. It's not a nostalgic view. I'm not nostalgic. I'm going to look how people... You see, this is one of the most famous eco building. Nobody can say this is an eco building because this is a Palladio and is a villa. But this is a big thing. Behind this building, there's something extraordinary. This building was done by Palladio attached to this hill. And inside of a hill, there was a cave. And this cave, of course, is inside of the cave, it was cool air and humid. And of course, they're using this also for cheese and salami, whatever, but mainly because this was an air conditioning system through the building, no? So it's a story called, from Galileo Galilei, you know, the famous guy who's looking at the stars. He was tell his story when he was young. He went to this villa for a party because everybody went to the party in the summer because it was so cool. So there's a big room. It was so cool and fresh and windy, you know. And say, well, and he tell this story many times. And also there was a series of gardens in the step down because this air was more humid and fresh and heavy. And this hair come out on the main room, but also go down on the garden. And ladies at that time, they have, you know, the big vest, and they felt this hair come through the legs and say, well, was something exciting them, you know, because there was something, some ghost, somebody touched the legs. But in the end, the story was this: there was an air conditioning system driving air through the building, through the gardens. No, that's what I find. I mean, this is an example. There's many examples of this thing. And we are under construction of this building. Is the Agency for the Environmental Protection. Is a building built with the ideas of form and performance. There are relationship between the way the shape of the building is made, the performance. And it's done in Ferrara, which is close to Bologna and Venice. And it's one floor, and this is the roof. And the roof is for optimizing the lighting and increase the ventilation. And this is a wood construction. I mean, there's only a floor. The foundation is just a platform, and then everything is prefabricating wood. And of course, for working in these kind of ideas of sustainability, well, we are using tools. You know, there are digital tools. You can find many programs, but also laboratory. This is a laboratory called Artificial Sky. You can bring your models under this machine, and this machine analyzes the lighting inside of your building, and you can change, you know, elements, colors, different texture, and you can feeling how much the lighting change in terms of quantity and quality. And this is very important for a building. I mean, lighting in a building is everything. Huh? And then how these buildings work. Of course, that's, as I said, it's not enough to make a free running building, but in the winter time, we're using this chimney. You can see it's a very high, it's 8 meters high. The chimney as a glass house, this air is being very hot. And with the fan, we mix up the air to reduce the demand of heating. And in the summertime, we open the grid, and they will be much more hotter in the top. And then be working as a chimney. You know, the airs go out and driving air from the bottom part through the building, increase the natural ventilation. Results of this is 85% of reduction of CO2 emission. Then we have a system for cooling, like a cooling and heating floor, and a little bit of ventilation, but that is done by the shape of the building. So, and I'm not working too much on residential building because mainly the residential building in Italy is done by contractors. Contractors, they want to do the same things. They don't need an architect, they do themselves. But I was very, very engaged on the idea of social housing problems. There are in Italy, and I suppose in Turkey, there will be not many difference. 5 million families, they cannot buy or living in a house because the affordable house is very difficult. They only build residential building for the speculative market. There's a very little work on the social housing from the government. So what happened? Nobody going to make a social housing. So we did a project, very simple. And it was called 100,000 euro house. Now you can buy 100 square meters for 100,000 euro. That's your price. And it's a low cost, a dream home, and low environmental impact. But why? Because it's a long story. I try to be very short. The family, the organization of the family is very different. You cannot say yourself, you're not a typology. You are a family with your style of life. You don't define yourself, I'm 2 rooms, corridor and bathroom. No, when you talk about your friends, you say, I like to live with my friends, I want a living room, I want a little kitchen, I want a big kitchen. So the market proposing typology, the construction industry proposes a typology, and the market asks for different houses. There's 2 things, they don't match in together. So then what we did, say we don't want to over-design anything. We just say this building is prefabricating. We're going to build this on the earthquake area. Then I show you the school I did. Because it's a fast construction, very pre-industrialized system, and you have 70% of the facade opaque, super insulated. And with this, you guarantee you're already in class A in terms of energy. Then, if we can, is on the south direction, and is a common space, because the question of housing is not only your apartment, it's the way you socialize, the way buildings can make the difference in the way people live. So the way you make your stairs, the way you go up, the way you're using the common space. And there's a huge demand of people asking to sharing things, because it's difficult, it's a very high difficulties economy. People now, they share in things because they cannot buy everything alone. And the idea was you have a common space on the ground, and more buildings, especially the high standard building. I was shocked last, I saw a project I was in Toronto, and the guys make a skyscraper, but the first 5 floors are services for the apartment. So they built small apartment, but then you can use a party room, you can use a children room, so they shift the space in a common space. And this was almost the same, but that's for low budget. No? And then it's a different way to go up, and they say, well, we're not going to make lift, it costs 80,000 euro. People can walk up, as happened in many historical centers. Then it's a lift only for accessibility. You bring your bicycle on top, but then the tricky thing is every apartment, they have 30 square meters of photovoltaics. 30 square meter photovoltaics is less than 3 kilowatts. And if you have a performance house, you don't use all this energy. So you sell this energy to the net. Because the government pay you 4 times more your kilowatts than the kilowatts you buy to the net, this house produces 158 euro of credit every month. And with this money, you pay your mortgage. That's the tricky things. That for me is innovation. Using innovation and technology to make some benefit for all, because if not, what is the game? You know? And then, of course, there's many other things to say. I want to show you another project I was very exciting to do, and it's close to my buildings. There was a terrible buildings, a social housing built in 1973, very, very bad condition. This dream of common space in 1970 that never worked, so the space is abandoned, and you see maintenance, it was difficult. And there's a lot of asbestos fibers on the facade. So what happened? We clean all the buildings. So you can see from here, the buildings are clean. We take away everything, and then we're going to put on the top of the building, I show you, 100 student rooms. So this is a social housing. This is already people living in. And in the top we have this student, residential student, and they will be mixed up with the people because they're going to use the same lift, they're going to use the same stairs, they're going to use the same lobby area. And then people after 40 years, there was a shock because they said, nobody cared about us, nobody cared, nobody was making any maintenance. And now you can clean my building, and then I become an icon building. It's fantastic. The people were super overexciting about this. And we are now on the stage of renovating the existing building, and the structure we put in top is all in wood. It's wood construction. We was assembling on the ground and bring on the top. That's it. And this is this is the last two projects. I did a school for after the earthquake in close to Bologna. It was in April this year. It was designed in 7 days and built in 40 days. That was the competition rules. And you can say, how are you going to design 7 days a building and then build in 40? Well, we did. This is the area. This is Bologna, Modena, Padua, Venezia. So this is all the area of the earthquake. This is the area. There's some concept. And then we are working with a prefabricating company. They do prefabricating concrete walls. They only do one product, a wall, 3.5 meter high, 8 meter long. So the dimension of a truck to bring this on the highway. That's it. And what happened? And then we built this. Of course, is a safety building for earthquake. Was built in a weekend from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Assembling all is a dry system of assembly. Then paint it. Make this very simple roof. And that's the school's finish. And it was finished in the end of, it's finished now. The kids are going to go next week. So to finish my conversation, and thank you for your patience, I want to show this experience is an extraordinary thing. It happened to us to working with United Nations, and Gaza, unfortunately, is a bad moment for Gaza and Israel. It's very difficult, as was always done. But the Green School for Gaza is, maybe these people have a lot of problems, what they care about green buildings. No, but why is so important? It's important because buildings, in this case, they're using for kids, and the kids, difficult for kids to study in an environment where it is very cold and very hot. It's very difficult. The capacity of learning is dramatically down. And this building was collecting water from the roof. So we collect all the rainwater and put it on a cistern. And using this system of holy columns, then you put earth in and creating the mass, the thermal mass of the building, which is very important because the wind in the summer also, the wind in the night is cool, and then the building has a capacity to take this. And then, of course, some decoration. And the garden, you can see the garden. This is not a garden. It's a system of cleaning the water. So we are recycling 80% of the water inside the school and using simple technique. That's what I'm saying, vernacular architecture. I'm not nostalgic. In this building, there's no one machine because there was no electricity. There's no electricity, little one during the day. We're using a system in the winter. Is a channel on the ground of the foundation, bring air inside of the building, because the earth is always between 17 18 degrees, so they warm up the air, and then we put some little heating system here from solar panel. But in the summer, we increase the ventilation by solar chimney. The chimney is suck the air from the ground, increase the ventilation and reduce the temperature. Results of this is -4 degrees inside the school, no machine. There was no air conditioning, nothing. So that's what I'm saying. For me, innovation is very difficult to say what it is. But for me, almost the innovation is part is in the product, but mainly is on the knowledge. And of course, a school will have a capacity to produce energy with the photovoltaics, and water is creating a sort of a small grid, a smart, we talk about small smart grid. This is a smart grid. And I'm finished with this little story, the 1 minute. Everybody know Marco Polo? No? Marco Polo is running around Asia and also passing from the Black Sea. And then he tells in this book, he went in Persia, which was a big region, and the people for welcome this guy, they never saw a white guy say, well, welcome, they give to him an ice cream. So how the Persian people on 1274 was able to make an ice cream in the middle of the desert. There was no electricity, there was no fridge. And how they make a building? They was able to build this building with a big wall. It's a shape like a big sea, like this, no? 100-meter long. And a little pool here, no? Just a few centimeters, and people walking for days to find water, no? On the mountains, on the rivers, they're coming back. They're excavating this cistern and covered with a dome here, no? But they putting in the winter time, this wall is protect the solar gain, because the sun is lower and there is never solar gain during the day. So this floor will be keeping cool, no? In the night, the sky is minus 55 degrees. When you fly, the captain always say the temperature outside minus 15. So that's the sky. And for the effect of the radiation of the sky, because the sky was clear, no? 1 centimeter of water here will be frozen. And in the night, every night, the frozen layers of water, they stock here with a straw. They make it full. This ice is frozen the earth, and the summertime, this system, ventilating, and this dome is protected from the solar gain, because the hot of this will be the air, the ventilation out of this hole is ventilating and avoiding the heating system inside of the. And the Persian guys was able to make an ice cream on 1274 in the middle of the desert through a building. So I'm saying, why, if they was able to do this without technology, nothing, why we are not able to make a sustainable building? That's impossible not to do it. Thank you.
Is there any question for Architect Cucinella? We have time for just one question if you want. No?
Be brave.
So we can leave you free. We can let you free.
Thank
no
you very
problem.
much.
And thanks again.
Thank you.
It was really interesting.
Thanks, Mario.
No, c'è nessun problema. Okay, I just want to conclude very quickly. I want to thank you all. I think we all learned 3 main lessons today about innovation. Oh, sorry, there is one question. Mario?
Yes, yes. There's always somebody.
Fatma Özberki.
I will never listen.
Fatma Özberki. Thank you very much. My question is how you will asset all those green LEED, BREEAM certification that has not that common sense that we are seeing, historical common sense. There is a try, but without not valorizing the past, and how you asset it.
Well, I'm trying to understand better your question. How I can mix this, or
no, how you are valuing the LEED, those certifications, systems that are not always related with the historical knowledge.
Yes. Well,
directly.
Well, there are some. Well, there's not a connection directly, because. The problem of some certification is coming from the past. Some certification is only talk about performance, and sometimes, if you want to reach that performance, you need a lot of machine. That's why I'm not agree about the certification systems, because its risk is coming back from an old story of industry to put a lot of machine to get that number precise. And you can only get that numbers with technology, which I'm not fully agree. Of course, there are standards. I think, and the critical point is to change the ideas of what is a comfort. What comfort is, because comfort is mainly done by engineering system. Then comfort is 22 degrees and 70% of humidity. But you cannot make a sustainable building with these numbers. It's impossible, because you cannot be able to ensure then you can always have a 22 degrees and always have a 65% of humidity. So I think things are changed a little bit, because we're pushing more on energy consumption and CO2 emission more than certifications, because certification is a tricky thing. So we need to be very careful, because it depends who do it. Like I think LEED certification is a good thing, but it doesn't consider energy one of the priority. So what happened is the certificate is important, because it's definitely a building through. Definitely a building passed through a certification is a better building, because you need to check, you need to verify the process of quality, But for me, the goal is go to reduce the CO2 emission and get a very high performance building, and that means the best thing to do is using high thermal mass, high insulation, so minimize the demand of energy. And then, but if you look this as a priority, and you look outside the door, it's difficult to see that outside the door, because the panorama of building, they don't really look about this. So that's what I'm saying, is a lot of work to do. And it's a lot of work to do if also the government, they decide, here I heard the Turkey, they want to make a third of the building safe in terms of earthquake. But if the government tomorrow say, I want my stock of building between now and 2020, 50% of CO2 emission, that would be a fantastic opportunity, because first an obligation, and then you oblige designers first, architects, suppliers, contractors, all the chain, and a certification, because then you need to certify is really your building is 50% less CO2 emission. So that's what I think is a very important, the political side in this moment, because if you want to make a safe buildings, you need to make a safe building, because it's a minimum requirement that your building doesn't fall in your head. But second one is the safety for the environment. These two things are very, very important. And you know what happened is, if you only waiting some developer, they will be too small. There will be maybe few developers they want to do this. In the market, there may be few actors they want to do. You need to make a strong political action. If you do, that's what the European try to do. The European Commission start to say, well, 2020, all the European countries need to reach 20% less emission, 20% of 20% emission, 20% of energy, renewable energy, and 20% of reduction of energy. So it's very clear. There's no doubt. So, and time is very important, because when you say 2020, I mean it's only from now to 8 years. You know how slowly is the system to change. You need to thinking about, talk about architects. No, I'm not defending architects, because they are good and bad. You can imagine how much education you need to put on the market to change the culture and the knowledge of an architect to make sustainable building. This is a huge task, because everything starts from the design. So you need to take all the community of architects, say to them, look, from tomorrow, your goals are others. You need to make building this and this and this in this way. Then creativity is another story. And then you need to take suppliers and say, well, I want this kind of a product because I want to reach that level. And then you take contractors, they normally do building in a way, to do in another way. So you bring all these massive numbers of people, you need to take it and drive it slowly to the change. That's why I think it's time is something very important, because it's the only way using this time to help everybody, because it's not an easy change, but it needs to be done very, very quickly. That's why I don't know here, I'm sure there are how they call in English, the college, university first as educational program, and Ordre des Architectes, I'm going to say, the Council of Architects. The chambers. They can play a fundamental role for educating, help with information, meeting, to help all these architects to go, and working with the engineering community. So you see, the task is complex. That's why I insist that there will be a moment that we need to start to make this change. That's the point.
Thank you again, Mario. Well, I think it's enough. I'll set you free. I just want to say really a few words that today I think we learned three important things about innovation. That innovation is needed as a new competitive advantage to grow in the country, but we have to consider innovation as part of our culture, and it can't be separated by our tradition and by our way of apply technologies, and also, as Mario teaches us now, to our condition in terms of climates and nature. The other thing is that innovation can be no longer separate from the concept of sustainability, and also, again, as Mario teaches, to the concept of ethic and empathic process. So now we have always to consider that innovation has to be a way to make our building better and less impactant on the environment. And the third thing is that nature, it's a good way, it's a good teacher for our way of to do innovation. And we can learn a lot from nature to bring in our country more and more innovation. Thank you so much for everyone, and I hope to see you again in the next conference.